around all you want, but don't try anything funny.
Hello dear viewer and welcome to the newest exciting Skyrim build. I will start with a little segue. I was completely unable to figure out a cool immersive name for this build. In my mind and heart I will forever call him the Necro-Druid, but it sounds like a power metal band, a very edgy one. So I asked my viewers for ideas and you guys did not disappoint, so to say. While I greatly appreciate names like Bone Handler and Bob, Lord of Composting, in the end I went with a safer option of naming the build after one of the spells he uses. It's not that you guys didn't have good ideas, it's just naming a Necromancer/Druid hybrid is very hard apparently. There is another community input this time used in the build to the fullest extent. One of you pointed out a technique I would never think of myself. There are spells in Triumvirate mod that are self-targeting summon spells, and in Odin mod there are spells allowing you to apply self-targeting spells to your allies and summons. This means we can summon a little squad of Ravagors, corrupt, twisted elk-like creatures out of already existing summons, animal followers, wild companions, and pets and followers and all that. This is insane and Ravagors go very well with the idea of a corrupt Necromancer-Druid. This combo alone makes the build insanely powerful and immersive. But there is more. The finished build wears Mirax's robes, which has the very unique effect of poisoned tentacles hitting nearby enemies when you take a hit. With the Reliquary of the Myth, these tentacles will also absorb attributes from them, which combined with some other attributes absorbing spells and effects from Triumvirate results in a nearly endless regeneration of attributes, which is very lucky as my choices in gear have led me yet again to a very subpar armor rating. It won't matter in the end, but consider an early game alternative to the set discussed in the gear section, even taking mage armor perk ranks to later remove them after defeating Mirax. What is completely unique about Mirax's robes is that the tentacle explosion will be triggered when you are in the vampire lord form, or in our case, in the angry walking tree form. The THORNBRIAR can also raise up to 4 undead thralls and can equip them with staffs and weapons, so if you raise some powerful necromancers this way, you can have a little army of walking dead and decomposing vile animals, all of them buffed with Summermyst Fortify Minions enchantment, or for our living followers, by Area Restore Health enchantment, paired with the inspirational perk in Vokrii. So let's look at the list of mods since I'm already talking about them. Yes, obviously we use Vokrii, the Inspire perk, healing our allies over time, and Alter Self perk, increasing our resistances and health, and the Staff perks in Enchanting are the most important Vokrii perks used here. The Staff is a just-in-case thing, and most of our power comes from spells. Evenstar, the minimalistic standing stone overhaul, is used for the simple yet effective change to the ritual stone, increasing our summon limit by 1. This combines with the Necromancer's amulet changed by the Reliquary of the Myth mod. The amulet will also increase the summon limit by 1, so with the Twin Souls perk we get a total of 4! 4! Each one of them can be a permanent thrall, each buffed with the Necromancer's amulet and Fortify Minions enchantment from Summermyst. And they all get a Ravagor. Then Morningstar, I deem it optional for this build, I use it for the sake of playing as a wood elf. They can turn an animal into an ally at the cost of 50 stamina and magicka instead of just once per day. It means you can feel like a Necromancer-Druid from the very early levels as soon as you get any Raise Undead spell. Since we use many unique items and artifacts, the Reliquary of the Myth will be quite central to the build. The changes it makes to Miraak's robes and Necromancer's amulet has been mentioned, but we will also use the Ring of Namira. It will, on top of enhancing your health and health regeneration after feeding on corpses, grant you a rechargeable ward, a special defense against both magical and physical attacks. It breaks after 25 points of damage is dealt to it and then recharges, and it has a chance to reflect that damage onto the attacker. It will help a bit with our armor rating problems. And then we have 3 spell mods from which most of our power is derived: Triumvirate, Odin and Apocalypse. Yeah, okay, full disclosure, I added Apocalypse for Yokato's recital pretty much exclusively. I am not proud of myself, but the spell can trigger 3 different self-targeting spells whenever a combat starts, even if we are in our tree form. This can be used to enhance your werewolf or vampire lord forms too, but that's a matter for another build. We use it to make our horned lord form better. Of course, you will also need the compatibility patch for Vokrii and Odin. We also use Winter is Coming Cloaks of Skyrim, and on our head we have Valkyrie's Crown from Immersive Armors. If you are on PC, you can enable the distribution of the crown via MCM. If not, well, I guess you need to wear something else on your head. It's a heavy armor piece anyway, and really doesn't do in terms of effectiveness, so maybe you will find something more reasonable. The attribute spread is 2 magicka per 1 health. We will occasionally engage in direct physical combat once we obtain the Force of Nature spell, transforming us into the Horned Lord, so some minute investment in stamina could be justified. Since I needed some restoration perks anyway for the build, I opted instead for using the form with a restoration spell in one hand and the respite perk unlocked. If you would like to have some stamina, I don't think you need more than 5 level ups invested in it anyway. The race is a wood elf. Naturally, I also considered a Breton, but since the Miraak's set is altered by Reliquary of Myth, we won't be able to reach 100 spell absorption anyway, so animal friends from day one seemed more useful and roleplay appropriate. Also, this is anniversary edition build. We can make spell absorption potions now, and that's what I went for, since alchemy suits a druid perfectly, and we have the druid craft spell, making some ingredients grow on slain foes. Even some very rare ingredients like Gleam Blossom or Yellow Mountain Flower. The spell is much more useful than it seems at first glance. I'm actually in alchemy heaven right now. And as mentioned, the Standing Stone is the ritual for the extra summon slot. The skills to perk are Alteration, Conjuration, Restoration, Enchanting, Speech, Alchemy, and a tiny little bit of Distraction. Let's start with the staple of all necromancers, Conjuration. We want the entire necromancy branch, obviously, including Necromaster and Twin Souls. This way our undead minions will get extra attack speed and movement speed, they will absorb health in melee range, and the thralls will get all their attributes increased. I also discovered that the little health absorbing effect from your thralls and zombies will trigger your Miraak robes tentacles, so it's rather effective. And we can customize the weapons held by the thralls on the fly. Obviously, you can also gear them up before you raise them, and we also would like to have some Atramancy and Oblivion Stone. Consider them optional as they will have a single use. When we enter the Lord form, we need some armor rating, so we summon an Ursin Familiar, which increases our armor rating by 100 plus 100 from Ebony Flesh and a little bit from our crown and necklace, plus the health absorption of our spells, and yes, we can fight up close even with our subpar armor rating. If you tend to stay behind your summons and use your spells more, you may skip the Atramancy branch. Granted, these perks will also affect Ravagors, which we conjure from allies. In Restoration, we go for all the poison spell perks. Poison spells will be our main way of dealing direct damage, often paired with Draining Touch or Miraak's Staff. Respite is a high priority perk for this build, especially if you use the Horned Lord form often, because we need those power attacks going and we don't have a lot of stamina. Luckily, we absorb it with tentacle explosions too. We will also take both ranks of Inspire, because an animal companion will be a major part of the build, and this perk will slowly regenerate health of such a companion. Make the companion a troll with a natural health regeneration bonus, and cast Troll's Blood on that troll via Radiate Energies spell. And now you have a triple troll! A troll with a booster! Inner Light, both ranks will improve our magicka management greatly, especially that we will end up with loads of magicka, and the regeneration granted by this perk depends on the magicka total. In Alteration, we would like to have Okato's Preparation. Yes, the best armor spell will grant us as little as 100 armor rating, but as explained before, with Ursin Familiar and a lot of attribute absorption, and given the sheer amount of spells we are going to cast, it seems worth it to have some armor rating granted to us automatically and for no cost. We also want 2 ranks of Alter Self, one for a health increase, another for shock and fire resistance. We will pair the resistances with potions, and our health will be further increased by feeding on corpses. The Atronach perk will be paired with potions of spell absorption, so we can potentially reach 80% chance of absorbing a spell. Not a perfect 100 unfortunately, but good enough, especially when some resistances are involved as well. So yes, since some potion brewing is involved, a few perks in alchemy are in order. Just the minimal investment of Mastery, Benefactor and 1 or 2 ranks of Slow Metabolism is going to be enough. Needless to say, Fortify Restoration and Fortify Distraction potions are going to be used frequently, especially that our distraction spells will all be non-elemental, so we cannot increase their effectiveness with elemental perks. Luckily, Vokrii has the Raw Power perk in Distraction, so let's grab all ranks of that one. This Distraction perk setup with an endgame Fortified Distraction potion can make our Draining Shroud spell absorb over 40 points of health and magicka from nearby enemies. Needless to say, we can also place that shroud on all our minions, which I did frequently. There is also the matter of enchanting. For a build using mostly pre-enchanted unique items, it seems a little bit wasteful to go for extra effect, but the 2 slots that were not occupied by uniques can be used to amplify Distraction and Restoration, as well as to buff all our summoned and raised minions, and it makes the build so much stronger and the fights get much faster, even on legendary, that I couldn't really resist. The staff branch was useful from the very early levels, as in the beginning of the game you may need to supplement your spellcasting with staffs, and later on the Mana Shield perk can help us offset a low armor rating, as it reduces 25% of incoming damage as long as a staff is wielded. Overall, you can consider perking something else, maybe a bit more in Alteration and Restoration, but perking the skill should help you at all stages of your playthrough, especially when prioritizing staff perks. A little bit of a tough call, this one, enchanting for this build, but I for one don't regret perking it. Never do. And last but not least, we take 3 perks in Speech: Mastery, Speak with Animals and Beast Master, to get the ability to recruit an animal to our party and later buff said animal with extra health, attack damage and movement speed. You can activate any animal in the world to make them your wild companion, which is not the same as an animal follower from the vanilla game, so you can have both. So that makes 4 dead thralls, an animal like Miko for example, and a wild companion, preferably a troll. Maybe add a human follower to that, and you can have a party of 8, including yourself, easily increased to 15 with the Radiate Energies Conjure Ravagor combo. Now for the gear, we have Mirak's robes, boots and gloves, as well as his staff. The sooner you defeat Mirak, the better for the rest of your playthrough. The robes will trigger a tentacle explosion when we are hit, absorbing 15 points of health, magicka and stamina from nearby foes. This works and looks insanely cool when you fight in your Horned Lord form. Mirak's staff is an amazing tool of crowd control and deals quite a lot of poison damage, especially that it scales with Fortified Destruction potions and Amplified Destruction enchantments, allowing us to easily reach 60 points of poison damage per second. I like to open combat with two relatively cheap spells: Bramble Growth, which deals ongoing bleed and poison damage in an area of your choice, and then the Web spell, which slows both movement and attack speed of enemies in an area. Then I take out my staff and spread the Tentacly Zone of Poison on top of those two effects. Very few creatures will survive this, and even if they do, they will be unable to do anything for quite some time, opening themselves to your angry minions. Then we have the Ring of Namira, enhancing our health upon feeding and increasing our defense. Then the Necromancer's Amulet, absolutely OP in Reliquary of Myth, granting us extra 80 points of magicka, extra summoning slot, and improving our undead minions with extra health regeneration and attack damage. It also slows down our own magicka and stamina regeneration, but given the amount of attributes we absorb, it is hardly a problem. For the rare occasions when it becomes a problem, we have the Respite perk with healing spells. Finally, the two items we enchant ourselves: the head item with Amplified Destruction and Restoration, and a Bear Cloak of Area Restore Health and Fortify Minions. These are both awesome and stack with the already ample buffs you grant to your party. And yes, I used one extra item slot. I feel filthy. But then this character is also filthy, so it all just works.
It's not, I'm not kidding.
Now for the rather lengthy list of spells. This is the endgame spell list. Obviously use the cheaper versions when available, and remember about the Exhume Wolf Odin spell for the early game. It summons a decomposing body of a wolf, slightly stronger than most wolves you can encounter, for you to perform some necromancy on. It seems like it is meant for druid necromancers, to be honest. As for Okato's recital, put Spirit of Thornbriar, Draining Shroud and Troll's Blood in. All three spells will be amplified with your head item. You will absorb over 40 points of health and magicka, regenerate health 110% faster, and passively poison enemies hitting you in melee. If you expect to fight up close, which is preferable in tight and narrow spaces where your team may have some difficulties navigating, you may consider replacing Spirit of Thornbriar or Troll's Blood with Poison Strikes. Speaking of which, placing Poison Strikes and Orc's Strength on your friends and minions on top of the Draining Shroud mentioned before is a sure way to annihilate everything while staying back and enjoying the carnage. Of course, there is also that neat trick when you give all your summons and thralls a Ravagore. Do remember though that when you use Radiate Energies to do it, it's best doing it after combat started, because otherwise the spell may recognize some enemies that are not yet aware of you as allies, hence giving them a Ravagore. We would like to avoid that. Alternatively, you can remember to only use the Ravagore trick when you are absolutely sure there are no enemies around. There is also an utility spell called Druidcraft, which will have a subtle yet powerful impact on your playthrough. When cast on a body, it turns it into a plant, a random ingredient for you to harvest, often in amounts above usual vanilla 1 ingredient per plant. This spell alone meant I had much less of a headache with deciding on alchemy perks, because the very minimal investment turned out to be enough with the ingredient output of this spell. As a little cherry on top, we can also add two extremely thematic shouts: Animal Allegiance and Soul Tear. Soul Tear deals quite a lot of damage and makes soul hunting easier and suits the build perfectly. Some other useful spell combos are described in the skills section, so let's summarize, because I think we've got about everything, and the bloody video is bloody long. I'm British now for some reason.
Shut the fuck up, let's summarize.
With the Thornbriar, we get a powerful necromancer and a corrupt druid, fascinated by death and decay, pushing his minions to the limits of their physical abilities, preying on the life forces of his foes, capable of taking a fight personally when everything else fails, with nasty tentacles springing out of his body on a regular basis. This is truly disgusting in the best possible way. And now we reach the end of the video. I need to do the thing. If you enjoy the content, like this video, subscribe and enable notifications so you never miss the amazing worldwide web content provided by the amazing Blizzardus Gaming Incorporated. Consider supporting us on Subscribestar so that more amazing content can be produced. Oh, God, this is disgusting.
It's not, I'm not kidding.
We must see each other again, fellow gamers. Bye-bye.
Jugglers and singers require applause. You are a
Gamer!